So Jai Bhim and Namo Buddhaya to all of you. Today we are going to look at an interesting section from the Buddha and his Dhamma. But before we do that, we will chant our Trisaran Panchashil, Trisaran, or the initial three verses of Trisaran Panchashil. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. So when we look at this interesting concept of karma or kamma, it gets very confusing because it's often linked with the concept of rebirth. And whenever people talk about karma or kamma in Pali, they cannot but refer it to what is called rebirth. So in this part, Baba Sahib Ambedkar has tried, as we have seen, in various ways to define what is the Dhamma. And in this particular part, in this particular chapter, Baba Sahib Ambedkar has titled this chapter number 6 in the part what is Dhamma as to believe that karma is the instrument of moral order is Dhamma. So as we know that Baba Sahib Ambedkar was someone who will think about everything very carefully. He will try to elaborate everything so clearly so that there will not be much room for the confusion. And we have seen that in the preface of the Buddhism, Baba Sahib Ambedkar has raised this point of karma and rebirth, because this is considered to be one of the very controversial teachings of how a being comes into being, or how the people are born, or how the beings are born. So when we are looking at this very interesting concept, I think this chapter is very helpful for us to understand. So let's begin to understand what Baba Sahib Ambedkar meant by to believe that karma is the instrument of moral order is Dhamma. Now, the very first verse of this chapter begins with a very profound statement. And that statement is there is an order in the physical world. So you see, whenever we look at the world outside, there is an order, there is a pattern. And in mathematical terms, we can say that, the pattern mathematics. So what are the patterns? There are different patterns emerging continuously. For example, the trees are born and the human beings are born, and they repeat the same patterns. For example, there is a pattern of the movement of the sun. There is a pattern of the seasons. There is a pattern in how the seeds grow into a tree or the human beings are born. So these patterns are everywhere, all over the places. These patterns are. In other words, as Baba Sahib Ambedkar has said in the very first statement of this chapter, is that there is an order in the physical world. This is provided by following phenomena. He explains why there is an order in the physical world. What is an order in the physical world? So he says that there is a certain order in the movements and actions of the starry bodies. We all know that the stars move. There is a pattern in their movement. The galaxies move. The solar system is in motion. The earth is in the motion in a particular pattern. The moon is in motion in a particular pattern. So there is a pattern and order. There is a certain order by which seasons come and go in regular sequence. We know that there is summer now, then there will be winter, and there will be rainy season, and there is a pattern to the season. There is a certain order by which seeds grow into trees, and trees yield fruits, and fruits give seeds. Okay, so in Buddhist parlance or terminology, these are called the niyamas or the niyams. Laws which produce an orderly sequence such as Rutuniyam, Bijaniyam. So in the Buddhist parlance, these different need, these different patterns or different orders, as Baba Sahib said, are termed as Rutuniyam, means the order of the seasons. Bijaniyam, the order of the seed. And then there is a Chittaniyam, the order of the mind, the way the matter, the mind, has an order. If we do this, this will happen. Like the very first verse of the Dhammapad, which states very clearly the order of the mind. Mano Kubangama Dhamma Mano Setta Mano Maya Mansache Paduttena Bhasati Va Karoti Va Tatonang Dukha Manveti Chakham Va Vahato Padam. So there is an order. So if we speak or act with an impure mind, then the suffering is definitely going to follow, just like the wheels follow the hoops of the bullock of a bullock cart. Likewise, if we act with a clear mind, then the happiness follows. Happiness never leaves you, just like the shadow will never leave us. So here we are talking about the Chittaniyam. Then there is a Dhammaniyam and there is a Kammaniyam. There is an order in the Kamma. So whatever happens in the moral order has an order. It's not by by we can say ordained by some external agency. There is a certain order in the universe. The moral order is determined by certain things. So let me read these 4 verses very much clearly again. There is an order in the physical world. This is proved by the following phenomena. There is a certain order in the movements and the actions of the starry bodies. There is a certain order by which seasons come and go in regular sequence. There is a certain order by which seeds grow into trees and trees yield fruits and fruits give seeds. In Buddhist terminology, these are called niyamas, laws which produce an orderly sequence such as Rutu Niyam, Bija Niyam. Baba Ambedkar has given 2, but in the traditional list, we find Chitta Niyam, we find Dhamma Niyam, and we find Kamma Niyam. So the verse number 6 goes into this like this. Similarly, is there a moral order in human society? How is it produced? How is it maintained? And this is the question that Baba Ambedkar has asked. Is there a moral order in human societies? So when we are talking about the human being, is there a moral order? Is there a certain pattern by which the moral order goes in the positive direction or in the negative direction? Or this how is the moral order produced in the human societies, and how it is maintained in the human societies? What is the law that governs the moral order of the human societies? And here, if we look at the heading of this chapter, believe that karma is the instrument of moral order is Dhamma. Those who believe in the existence of God have no difficulty in answering the question, and their answer is easy. So those who believe in the God or the God-centric religion gives the answer to this question as follows. Moral order, they say, is maintained by divine dispensation. It's God. It's a God that determines the moral order. God created the world, and God is the supreme governor of the world. He is also the author of moral as well as of physical law. So for the theistic religion or the religions which thinks in the third party intervention and believe in the divine dispensation, they have no difficulty in explaining the moral order of the society. They say that it's ordained by the supreme governor of the world. He is the author of moral law as well as he's the author of the physical law. Moral order, according to them, is for man's good because it ensues from divine will. Man is bound to obey God, who is his maker, and it is obedience to God which maintains the moral order. Now you see how clearly this verse number 9 goes into the formulation of the theistic religion as to how the moral order is maintained, because it is created by the God and the man is bound to obey the God, and therefore the obedience to God which maintains the moral order. Such is the argument in support of the view that the moral order is maintained by divine dispensation. So that's how the moral order is maintained according to the people who believe in the God or who believe in the maker of the universe. The explanation is by no means satisfactory. So this explanation given by the theistic religion is no more satisfactory. For if the moral law has originated from God, and if God is the beginning and end of the moral order, and if man cannot escape from obeying God, why is there so much moral disorder in the world? That's a logical question. Because the God is the creator of the moral order and the moral law originates from God, why is there so much, what Baba Ambedkar says, moral disorder in the world? How do we explain the moral decay or the moral decadence in the world? How do you explain the moral disorder in the world? What is the authority of the divine law? What is the hold of the divine law over individual? These are pertinent questions, but to none of them is there any satisfactory answer from those who rely on divine dispensation as the basis for the moral order. To overcome this difficulty, the thesis has been somewhat modified. So because they cannot answer the moral disorder in the world, they have modified their thesis a little bit. And in the verse number 14, Baba Ambedkar explains how they tried to modify the original thesis. It is said, no doubt creation took effect at the command of God. It is also true that the cosmos entered upon its life by his will and by his direction. It is also true that he imparted to the cosmos once for all the energy which served as the driving power of a stupendous mechanism. But God leaves it to nature to work itself out in obedience to the laws originally given by him. So this is the explanation. This is God created this, but he left it to the nature to work by itself. So God has created and left the moral order to the nature. So that if the moral order fails to work out as expected by God, the fault is of nature and not of God. This is the explanation put forward by the people who believe in the theistic religions. Right? So let's move on further. Even this modification in theory does not solve the difficulty. It only helps to exonerate God from his responsibility. For the question remains, why should God leave it to nature to execute his laws? What is the use of such an absentee God? So if God has nothing to do with the moral order, whether it's immoral or moral, then Baba Ambedkar asks the question as to why and how, what is the use of such an absentee God? So this is the question that Baba Ambedkar puts forward as to what is the use of such an absentee God if he has no work in this moral order. The answer which the Buddha gave to the question, how is moral order maintained, is totally different. How these moral patterns, how the moral order comes into being, whether there is a moral order or moral disorder, how is the moral order maintained? And the answer that the Buddha gave is totally different. And this is a very interesting point. His answer was simple. It is the Kamma Niyam and not God which maintains the moral order in the universe. That was the Buddha's answer to the question. So the moral order in the world, the moral order in the universe is determined by not God, but by what is called the Kamma Niyam. There is a niyam, there is a pattern, there is a law according to which whether the moral order is positive or negative is determined. And what is that law? We are going to understand it. In Pali text, it is said that Kammuna Vattati Loko. Now, Kammuna means by karma, by kamma. Vattati means revolves, rotates, put in motion, set in motion. Loko means people, the world. Kammuna Vattati Loko means by the karma, the world, the societies move, the societies revolve. They are set in motion by the karma. So the moral order is set in motion by karma. His answer is very clear, very simple. He says it is the karma niyam or kamma niyam and not God which maintains the moral order in the universe. That was the Buddha's answer to the question. The moral order of the universe may be good or it may be bad. The moral of the order of the universe may be good or it may be bad. But according to the Buddha, the moral order rests on man and on nobody else. So the moral order of the human societies rests on the human beings and not on any fictitious character or not on any concept of God or anything. It only rests on what Baba Ambedkar terms, according to the Buddha, the moral order rests on man. Kamma means man's action and vipaka its effect. Kamma vipak. There are two terms. Vipak is a result. And one vipak can also lead to another karma. So kamma means man's action. It's very simple. Action is deeds by speech, by body, speech, and mind. There are three types of karma. One we do with the mind, one we do with the body, and one we do with the speech. That determine what we do with our body, mind, and speech, the moral order of the societies. Nothing else. Kamma means man's action, and vipaka is its effect. If the moral order is bad, it is because man does akusala kamma. Now there is a kusala kamma and there is a akusala kamma. So the kusala kamma creates a good moral order, while akusala kamma leads to a bad moral order. And that's what Baba Ambedkar clears in this verse number 21. Kamma means man's action and vipaka is its effect. If the moral order is bad, it is because man does akusala, bad kamma. If the moral order is good, it is because man does kusala kamma. Very clear. There is no confusion in these verses. The Buddha was not content with merely speaking of kamma. He was not just content because he has to explain how the moral order of the universe comes into being. He spoke of the law of kamma, which is another name of kamma niyam. As I told, Buddha has talked about the 5 niyams. He talked about rutu niyam, bija niyam, chitta niyam, dhamma niyam, and kamma niyam. So we have to understand the law of kamma, which is another name for kamma niyam. By speaking of the law of kamma, what the Buddha wanted to convey was that the effect of the deed was bound to follow the deed. As surely as night follows day, it was like a niyam or rule. No one could fail to benefit by the good effect of a kushala kamma, and no one could escape the evil effects of a kushala kamma. Therefore, the Buddha's admonition was this: do kusala kamma so that humanity may benefit by a good moral order which a kusala kamma helps to sustain. Do not do a kusala kamma, for humanity will suffer from the bad moral order which an akusala kamma will bring about. So why do we do good? Why do we do kusala kamma? Because it creates a positive moral order. And whenever there is a positive moral order, it benefits the humanity. For example, the caste system is a negative moral order. It doesn't benefit the society. Maybe a few people, but for the majority, it creates a lot of suffering. Racism is a bad moral order. The gender discrimination is a bad moral order. So you see how profoundly clear the Buddha's teachings on the kamma is. I'm going to read it again, the verse number 25. Therefore, the Buddha's admonition was, do kusala kamma so that humanity may benefit by a good moral order which a kusala kamma helps to sustain. Do not do a kusala kamma, for humanity will suffer from the bad moral order which an akusala kamma will bring about. It may be that there is a time interval between the moment when the kamma is done and the moment when the effect is felt. It is so often enough. So sometimes, when we act, there is a long gap to realize the effect of them. But certainly there will be certain effects of the kamma action. From this point of view, kamma is either dittha dhamma, vedaniya kamma. So there are three categories of the kamma. One is dittha dhamma. Dittha dhamma means visible. Vedaniya kamma. visibly felt, immediately effective kamma. Upapajya vedaniya kamma, remotely effective kamma. Sometimes the results are not immediately felt. They are remotely felt. After some time, their results are out. Apopara, apora pariya vedaniya kamma, indefinitely effective kamma. We can never know when they are going to fructify those karmas. Indefinite. We don't know when they are going to fructify. So there are three types of kamma. One is dittha dhamma vedaniya kamma, immediately effective kamma. Upapajya vedaniya kamma, remotely effective kamma. And third, apora pariya vedaniya kamma, indefinitely effective kamma. So you see, there is a time gap. Sometimes the effect, the vipak is very soon. Sometimes the vipak is felt after some time. Sometimes the vipak is, we don't know when it is going to be felt. There is another classification of the kamma. Kamma may also fall into the category of ahosi kamma, the kamma which is not effective. Sometimes there are kammas which doesn't produce any effect. This ahosi kamma comprises all such kammas which are too weak to operate or which are counteracted by a more kamma at the time when it should have worked. But making allowance of all these considerations, it does not in any sense derogate from the claim made by the Buddha that the law of karma is inexorable. The theory of the law of karma does not necessarily involve the conception that the effect of the karma recoils on the door of it and there is nothing more to be thought about it. So it is not something an eye for eye sort of a karma that has been taught by the Buddha, that if you do this to this, this same thing is going to recoil on you. It is not eye for eye. You know, if I kill somebody, it's not necessary that that being will kill me in the future. So it is not that. The theory of the law of karma does not necessarily involve the conception that the effect of the karma recoils on the door of it and there is nothing more to be thought about it. This is an error. Sometimes the action of one affects another instead of the door. So sometimes our karma affects so many people. All the same, it is the working of the law of karma because it either upholds or upsets the moral order. There we can give many examples of this. Sometimes the action of one affects another instead of the door. So it doesn't mean that if we do the bad karma, it will affect, it will not affect, it will definitely create a moral order that will affect us. But at the same time, it's not one-to-one correspondence because the law of karma is very complex. The Buddha said that it's one of the achintaya. It is one of the laws where we cannot think more. It's achintaya. It falls in the category of achintaya. You know, it cannot be thought about. It's so complex to understand. The way it operates, it's very difficult to fathom. Individuals come and individuals go. We come and we go. But the moral order of the universe remains, and so also the law of karma which sustains it. Whether we are there or not, the moral order of the universe will remain. It is for this reason that in the religion of the Buddha, morality has been given the place of God. That's why in Buddhism, the place of the God is given to Sila. And what are Shilas? Shilas are nothing but the Kushala Kamma. And the Shila, as the word indicates, is the foundation of everything good in the world. There is a beautiful verse in which comes at the very beginning of the Vishuddhi Magga. So this Deva comes and asks the Buddha, Anto jata bahi jata, jataye jatita paja, tang tang gotam puchami, ko imam vijataye jatai. So the so-called God asks the Buddha that Anto jata, there is a complexity inside. Anto jata, bahya jata, there is outside complexity. Jataya jatita paja. The whole world is entangled. There is an inner entanglement, there is an outer entanglement. The whole world is entangled. Tang tang Gautam puchha. I ask you, Gautama, ko imam vijate jatang, who will cut this entanglement? And the Buddha answered, Sile patiktai naro sapayu, chittang payang cha bhavayang, atapi nipko cha bhikkhu, so imam vijate jatang. Sile patiktai means by on the foundation on the sila, with pradnya, with continuous striving, that man, that women can cut the entanglement. So you see how the sila and the kamma is related, and that's why we have this very beautiful gatha which we recite all the time. Sabba papasya karana. Sabba means all. This word the word sabba is so important in Buddhism. Sabba means every single pap. Sabba papasya karana. Kusalasya upasampada. Sachitta paryodapanam. Etang buddhana sasana. You know, the moral disposition taught by the Buddha, dreamed by the Buddha, is called Buddha Sasana. Is the moral order of the universe, the Buddha Sasana. Sabba papasya karna, kusala supasampada, sachitta pariyodapana, etang buddhana sasana. So this is the Buddha's, the majesty. This is the Buddha's universe, where all the paps, sabba papam, all akusala kamma, akaranam, not to do. Kusalas upasampada. Sachitta paryodapanang etang buddhana sasana. So we can understand how profound is this. Thus, the Buddha's answer to the question how the moral order in the universe is sustained is so simple and so irrefutable. And its true meaning is scarcely grasped. Often, almost always, it is either misunderstood or misstated or misinterpreted. Not many seem to be conscious that the law of karma was propounded by the Buddha as an answer to the question how the moral order is maintained. How the moral order in the universe is maintained. And to this question, that however is the purpose of Buddha's law of karma. So the Buddha's law of karma answers the question how the moral order of the universe or the human society is maintained. The law of karma has to do only with the question of general moral order. It has nothing to do with the fortunes or misfortunes of an individual. You see, the law of karma is made into the fortune and misfortune of an individual. I suffer because of my karma. They suffer because of their karma. They are born as untouchables because of their karma. They are born into higher caste because of their karma, so on and so forth. It is concerned with the maintenance of the moral order in the universe. And it is because of this that the law of karma is a part of Dhamma. So you see, Buddhism is a religion of action. It's not the religion of passivity. It is not the passive path, as it has been very much proved by Baba Sahib Ambedkar here. And it is the Dhamma. To act, to do the Kushala Kamma is the Dhamma. Because that's how you maintain the positive moral order. Otherwise, the negative moral order causes a lot of suffering for the people. And the negative moral order comes into being because of avidya, ignorance. And when there is a pradnya, the beings act in the light of that wisdom, and their conduct, both by body, mind, and speech, leads to, because it's a kushal conduct, it's a kushala kamma, leads to the positive moral order. How simple and how profound. But because the karma is linked with the individuals, as it relates to their rebirth or their death or their being born in a particular situation or a community, it confuses. Of course, there are two more laws, the Chitta Niyam and the Dhamma Niyam. There is a Bija Niyam, there is a law of genetics, there is a law of universes, like the law of gravity. There is a law of karma. Very profound. These 5 niyams are very profound teachings of the Buddha. And we have to study them at a very deeper level. So I think this explains very clearly what Baba Sahib Ambedkar meant by to believe that karma is the instrument of moral order is Dhamma. And this is the 6th chapter in the series of what is Dhamma. Karma is one aspect of it. Believing in impermanence is another aspect of it. Craving, giving up craving is an aspect of it. Then reaching perfection is an aspect of it, and purity of life is an aspect of Dhamma. So this is how Baba Sahib Ambedkar has explained what is Dhamma. And if we can understand Baba Sahib Ambedkar, this profound vision of what is Dhamma, we know what is the Buddhist practice, what is the Buddha's teachings very clearly. So the Buddha's teaching maintains that we have to act in the world. We cannot be indifferentism. We cannot practice indifferentism. This action, our action, it is a kushal action. You know, the kushal action of body, the kushal action of mind, the kushal action of speech. It creates a good moral order, a positive moral order. So with this, I think I end this chapter and this part, and we will open our class for the further discussions. Anybody would like to say anything, any comments? Anybody would like to comment or say anything, or disagree or whatever, just reflect on it. Pankaj bhai?
No, Mangesh bhai, by mistake. It is very thank you.
Okay, Vidyanand bhai.
Yeah. See, in our last discussion regarding and in between, while practicing a perfection, it is great to practice a kushal karma. It is greatly a factor of condition in which you are trying to practice those kushal karma. And quite often these conditions are not in under your control. If it is in your control, then you can certainly work out a condition suitability. But if there are certain instances where you are being brought into certain condition where practicing kushal karma may become a difficult. So how can I am trying to think of the ways where we can still stick to path of the purity and kushal karma, and then trying to solve those conditions, because in certain condition it is really important. I guess I'm trying. I made my questions clear.
No, you're right. Sometimes the conditions are around, which are around us, are difficult to let us practice something. For example, the Buddha has talked about how a person becomes a thief, and he has gone all the way into the nature of poverty, isn't it? So if there is an abundance, can we find the people who will steal? What will be the likelihood of a criminal society if the society is able to provide for all? So Vidyanand, you are right. Sometimes the conditions are difficult for the people, for the individuals. We know that the caste society creates a lot of difficulties for the people. We know that very well. But now what to do if the conditions, the moral order is like this? So some of us have to try to change the moral order by practicing the kushala karma.
Sir, I think this is the time when we have to play a skillful role. Means there are two things: unskillful act or skillful act. Whatever the conditions may be, one have to be skillful for a good karma, and for unskillful, we will face the bad. It will be termed as a bad karma, I think.
Now, for example, let's say great part of humanity is facing a crisis today, which can be termed and studied under the concepts of existentialism in the philosophy. And if we try to relate concepts of existentialism, the way philosophy in Western domain has developed, they don't talk about they say philosophy ends at the level when person faces a near-death crisis or existential crisis, when it is a question on his own existence. Then he has to the initial instinct of human are like he has to act for his survival, and then only he can think of certain other thing, then creating conditions, moral order, and because ethics, morality ends at the level of existential crisis. So, and if we see the large part of humanity today is being trapped in the existential crisis because of certain other means, be it a Ukraine war, be it a Taliban, be it a caste society, which traps many people into abstract poverty, where it leaves with bare minimal options for them for survival. And in such a cases, practicing a moral order is a bit difficult and perhaps quite an immoral for a person to practice moral order than to go for an instinct and think of his survival.
No, so there is, for example, the need to survive. I think we are not talking. We are mixing the two things here. The one number one is whatever is the moral order that has been created by the people's action. That's the first premise that the Buddha said. Whatever Ukraine war or the poverty in the world, these are all man-made crises. Okay, it is not some kind of the so-called existential crisis in terms of what Sartre has talked about. So, I would say that this everything, for example, the caste-based, the moral order is ordained by the human beings. Likewise, poverty, likewise, the wars. There can be a society without war also. There can be a society without poverty also. There can be a society without discrimination as well. So the point that is there is, when we are talking about the individual versus society, the individual doesn't have to act immorally. The individual doesn't need to react, immorally, unethically. There are a lot of instances where the people have come through the worst kind of conditions and the situations. Like I'm sure most of the our generation back or two generation back, our people have faced the worst kind of things and they have emerged out of that conditions. For example, we have the example of Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar himself. He has seen the extreme level of poverty, the extreme level of suffering, the extreme level of all that can go wrong with a human being. But still, he was there standing morally, standing, doing all kusala kamma, and we know the result. So there are wars. It's not the Ukraine war, it's the first war in the world. There were wars in the world. There was a Kalinga war, maybe much worse than we can think about. There was a huge bloodshed in the world. According to some philosophers, some thinkers, they say that the deaths caused by the war has reduced drastically. Never in the history there was much more relatively peaceful society than what we are living today. Look at the American Civil War. How many people were killed in the American Civil War, World War I, World War II, and so many wars that the humanity has witnessed. So the individual doesn't have to be at the mercy of the given moral order. That is why the Buddha's religion is all about hope. That's why the Buddha's religion is all about karma, kushala karma, acting in the world, striving, continuous striving. Those were the last words of the Buddha. There is no shortcut. And it needs continuous education. Unfortunately, people do not have that much education about, what to do to create a positive moral order. All these theistic religions that we are now talking about, has their moral order ordained by some God, some external agency. And that's what they believe in. Because they don't believe in the equality of the human beings. They think that because the God has said this, we have to do according to what the God has taught or told us to do through their sacred books.
And I have another question, like
Yes.
it's like
Buddha left the home to avoid the war between the two states. So he did not want any war. He stressed upon the man's action. moral
What
morality.
Vidyan is trying to get it as is a practical situation in which the people find themselves. So all this theory, how do we apply it in the society? So for example, if we want to, let's take the example of the community where most of us are coming from, that we have so many problems, so many situations, so many crises. Is not practicing Panchashila a way out of it? Or practicing Panchashila is way out of it? Whether loving each other way out of it or hating each other a way out of it?
No, see,
even
the thing
even
is,
even even sorry, even the Sartre has pointed about for existentialism is emphasis that the existence of individual as a free person, and he set a person as a responsible agent through his act. Means he has given the freedom for his own development, and the skillfulness and unskillfulness a person have to decide, and that's the what Buddha is pointing out, I hope.
yeah, I have, that's okay because, but the ethics and morality is like, is subject to the evolution of the society, and also it's subject to the institution under which persons are being brought. So, for example, and its definition changes over the period of time. It's never a constant definition that these are being considered as ethics. It is also subject to culture. It is also subject to different kind of people who are different kind of
So we are
society
not
what
talking
they
about that
practice.
ethics
Yeah.
here. We are not talking about the ethics in that term. The what we are, you see here, Baba Ambedkar has hardly used the word ethics.
Right.
So that's a very different discussion here, bringing about the ethics and all. Here the Buddhism is very clear. It talks about one man's relationship with another man, metta. Do we consider other human beings as like us, or do we grade human beings? Very simple like that. It's metta, meyatta, just like me. Do we consider equality as a principle of living the life? And if people wants to argue that they would want to live in a mettaful situation, they cannot relate with each other. There will be always a hierarchy in the relationship. So the Buddha is very profound, deeper than so-called ethical theories. He says that for a society to live in harmony, the equality is the definite principle. Without those principles, how will there be a social contract between the human beings? How will they associate with each other? How will they relate with each other? And then the question arises whether the human beings are equal. All human beings are equal. We know that no, they are not, because some people are rich, some people are poor, some people are that. But as a governing principle, equality is a must for any society to go further. And if the individual is posed against a society, then there is no need of any discussion of anything. So the point that we are talking about here is in terms of a very deep concepts or very deep truths that the Buddha has discovered. He said he discovered that if a human being treats another human being unequally, the suffering will follow. That's why the Buddha talks about the compassionate society. That's why the Buddha talks about the, even democracy, as Baba Ambedkar has taught us. And that's where the law of karma come into being. The fundamental, I think, linchpin of the law of karma will be metta. Do we practice metta? Do we practice liberty? Do we practice equality?
Eightfold path. Eightfold path.
Yes. So we can have a discussion on ethics at any time. We can have discuss those theories. But here, suffice is to say that the Buddha is very profound. He talks about the practical things. He says about the moral order as we witness today. There is so much dogmatism in the world. Nobody questions it. People stick to ideas which are so anti-human, so anti-humanity, so anti-human being.
Now, for example, let's say there are the kind of society we are living today. the good part of our living is being also being guided by the political institutions. It's also been guided by governing institutions.
Yes.
So, for example, government makes a rule that you have to pay a GST at certain point of time,
Yes.
and by some default, a minor default, which can be acceptable. It's not that, but the people are being asked to pay a huge penalty out of it, and government is forcing us. Let's say for and that's like these are being in sociology. People see scientists study these are like how the large part of civilization can be criminalized by the political institutions, the way they study in these things. So there is in a way, in that particular mechanism, there is in a way the attempt to criminalize a society. For example, let's say the demonetization had happened at one instant, at one stroke, and next day a good amount of a large part of population of India has been asked to go online and exchange their currency notes. So in certain at certain instances there are crowd huge, so people are being forced to act for immoral behaviors.
True.
So when we are being guided by such a kind of institution, and the practicalizing the concept of eightfold paths and the morality, and it becomes like meta. We have a meta, but it's also, if we are being brought into so depth of a condition, we are practicing that becomes a difficult. Else you will face other kinds of crisis.
No,
And
actually, whatever institutions you are talking about, they are not made by God. They are all
right, certainly.
made by the human beings. Whether
all
politics or economics or whatever there are, those
right,
all institutions are man-made. And if we
Mhm.
can find a way, that's why there is a whole concept, a whole struggle of Baba Ambedkar to get into politics. Why there is a reservation? Why there are so many things? So they becomes a part of a larger, larger ethical action, larger moral action, the community moral action. You see what I'm trying to get it at? We don't have to be so pessimistic about it. We know that these institutions are not sacrosanct. Today somebody is in the power, tomorrow there will be another person in the power. Isn't it? It's not going to remain perpetually as it is. Everything is subjected to change, everything is bound to change provided we act, isn't it? So the political system, they formulate the laws for us, that's true. But you look at the grand stroke of karma that Baba Ambedkar has played in terms of drafting such a good constitution. However, whatever drawbacks it must be having, but if it's still a document that has given the solace to so many billions of people in this country. Imagine a country without having that kind of a document today. Where will be the people's right? What will happen to the diversity in this country? Isn't it? So everything is man-made. That's the point that Baba Ambedkar is trying to get it at. If we understand this single point, all the institutions, the wards, the political systems, the economic systems are created by human beings. And because they are created by human beings, they can be changed by the human beings. There are examples in the world where people have changed the institutions. Isn't it, Vidana?
Yes.
So we are not helpless. That's what Baba Ambedkar is telling us. That's what the Buddha is telling us. There is a hope. There is something which we can do. There is always something which we can do at any moment of time. That freedom is there. That is the karma. That is the action in the world. We can all act. We can all act in a team manner, like Sangha. There was Buddha's Sangha, 60 people, 1,250 people. They changed the destiny of the humanity. The world before the Buddha is drastically different than what the world that we live today. And the more people understand it, there are of course there are people who are trying to create negative moral order because it benefits them for some time. So everything is not preordained in a sense that we can change it. If it was not for the change, if it was not for the kushal karma of certain people, their grandiose karma, their moral action, their grand moral action in the world, where would the world be? If there had been not for the Buddha's teachings, if there was no Baba Sahib Ambedkar, what would happen? Likewise, Vidyanand can do a lot. He can change the political destiny of this country. That is the capability the human beings have. That is the potential of the human mind, isn't it?
I think this is the way how it is produced and how it is maintained.
Yes. That's why, we don't have to lose hope. Whatever worst situation there are, we can still do something about it. That's what the Buddha is saying. You are not helpless. We are not helpless. We don't have to get bogged down by what is happening around. We have to stand up. We have to strive. We cannot be indifferent. We cannot just talk. We have to find the ways to do something.
See, why I'm trying to, because these days I'm really thinking of the evolution of society towards the AI, artificial intelligence based society. And if we think of the way AI society is rapidly unveiling, it has a capability to monitor each and every movement, each and every fraction of second of your day-to-day living and being. And accordingly, a huge amount of cultship can be developed at one stroke by sitting by one person. And in such a society, because nowhere across, if we look at the history of evolution of human society, it has never been happened till the level of extent with AI can do, where your liberty is being at your freedom are being closely monitored, closely monitored, that it becomes highly impossible to exercise that freedom. So these are like challenges coming for a generation.
You are right.
And,
What
yeah.
you are saying, I completely agree. I think no one is disagreeing with that. But of course, there are ways to eject out. That when a few years back, nobody would thought that the people would be able to eject out from the so-called operation of the caste system. A few people could. Likewise, we know that what you are talking about is true, but it's up to human beings. Some of you can eject out from the the grab of the total control over your bodies and your minds. Isn't it? That's the possibility that Buddha talks about. No? There is a possibility of escape from it.
There is one Parmita Upekka. It teaches that it is a state of mind where there is neither like nor dislike, remaining unmoved by the result and yet engaged in the pursuit of it.
No, what Vidyanand is trying to say is this, that the technology and all is going to control us. Okay, and it's true that our whole behavior is being watched, our choices are being monitored, and so on and so forth. And a particular, the way we are fed, a particular information has a power to control us. And he's true, he's right. And that is what the social conditioning and other cultural conditioning does to a human being. It's a part of a conditioning. And what the Buddha says is the conditions are temporary, they can be changed. Isn't it? The solutions could be found out. It's not that we are going to be at the mercy of the others all the time. Because the mind is a very magical device. Nobody has understood it as fully as the Buddha did. The human consciousness is a very magical sort of a thing.
Sir, as per verse number 27, there are lot of karmas has been described. And how in details we can in which book or in which paper can we get the explore more on these karmas?
I will try to find out the source from which this might have been taken, but you see this verse number 27, because there is a question about the action and its result. So sometimes we get, immediately effective comma with, we can see the result of those comma in our lifetime or in a span of a few. For example, if we have a bad relationship or a quarrel with somebody, sometimes with some of our good action, it can be immediately improved, isn't it?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Some kind of commas that we do today, for example, some institutional groundwork, it might in the future, become effective. Like we are trying to build a community which is peaceful, which is harmonious, which is full of respect. It might not be visible now, but maybe after 10 years, it might be.
It means such commas we have to evolve ourselves, and we have to make our own dictionary in that.
Yes, 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 yes. No, there has to be a dictionary of the Buddha and Dhamma, because there are so many terms which needs to be, defined from the text itself. We don't have to go to the other this thing, but like Ditta Dhamma Vedaniya Kamma, very beautiful word,
Yes, sir.
isn't it?
Yeah.
Upapajya Vedaniya Kamma and Apora Pariya Vedaniya Kamma. So you see, these all we can, some of you can go into the dictionary, Pali dictionary, and look into this word, make a history, glossary of it. There's a lot of work pending to do.
Yeah. True.
Like this Ahosi Kamma, that the some commas are so effective, so ineffective, they don't produce any result.
As always said, a lot of thesis could be written on all each and every line of this.
And there is one category of karma called Garuka Kamma, means very powerful kammas. So one of those kamma is if you feel the love for all sentient being for one moment of time, that can override lot of negative kammas.
Yes, yes. True.
You see, this kamma is a very magical word. So if your action is so powerful that it can create a lot of impact on the world.
Yeah, ripple effect. It can produce ripples.
Yes.
Yes. You should have motive,
Yes.
purpose. Then will
Very,
can be
yeah.
brought into action.
Very good. Very good points by Vidyanand. Maybe he can write something on it. Vidyanand, please write something on it and bring it into discussion, because these are the questions that we have to look into. Okay.
Yes,
Yeah, right.
challenging questions.
And
for-
actually, these are the question why I am so keen towards Buddhism to
Yes.
borrow some ideas, right?
No, I very much appreciate. Just please write down. What you're thinking is very important. Thinking, huh? Vidyanand, bhai?
Yeah.
Please do. Please do. If there is no further questions or comment, then should we end our class today?
I have one question. Like
Yes,
like a few days back in previous discussion when we discussed about the society, and Buddhist, there was a text and we had a discussion like in a way Buddhism is trying to develop a society which is a just society based on liberty, equality, and fraternity. But yesterday I had a visit to Ajanta caves, and while going through that painting, like stark inequality of that society is also visible in those paintings. So sometimes it comes to my mind whether like these are no doubt the idols of our society, but throughout the history, is there a time for a human society where these idols are being brought into practice and actually was into practice? So I was before going to yesterday's visit, I was of the opinion like those were perhaps the times where relative level of equality was there. But looking at those paintings, it distorted that opinion of mine. So how can we say that whether it can be brought into practice? Because somewhere we need to be driven towards that.
I didn't get your question. What do you want to say?
Yeah, the thing is like we had a discussion like the equality is not only merely an economic equality, and if I relate to Buddha and Karl Marx, The Baba Sahib has clearly told it should not be assumed because the fraternity cannot be brought just based on just based on economic equality. Because most of the questions of things are not in domain of economics. These are also in domain of sociology, in domain of some other disciplines.
Right.
So in that sense, the equality is a broader, in the context of Buddhism, equality is really a broader context. So it can be also a cognitive equality of mind where people are at the same pace, but relative inequality in economic sense.
Yes. So what is your question? What do you want to say?
That's because this idea is somewhere unacceptable to me, because as long as economic inequality persists, the degrees of freedom what a person can enhance. If I try to borrow from Saint's idea of capability building or some other philosophers, scholars who has worked on it, so it's somewhere not acceptable because somewhere your part of liberty is being somewhere guided by these factors also.
Right. No, I think you are working on a very good thought process. Maybe we would like to read more of your thoughts. If there is any question pertaining to today's discussion about the confusion over the concept of karma, or how we can go into that. But these are the questions which are very pertinent, very important, very useful, and maybe we hope all of us, I'm sure, to learn more about your opinions on this. So should we now end up with our class today, because we have already exceeded a few minutes,
Fine.
and we will meet next time.
Sure, sir.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank
Jai
you so
Bhim.
much. Jai Bhim, Namo Buddhaya.